So welcome to the Node API team meeting for September 3rd, 2021. We'll follow our standard approach of looking at the issues we've tagged for the milestone. Anybody have any announcements before we do that? Okay, if not, I'm going to share my screen. I assume everybody can see that now.
Yep.
Okay, so the first one we had there was the ask for a view of Node serial port. I know that a few people mentioned they were taking a look at it last time. Anything we should talk about on this week?
No, essentially because they just put the new things that we can review after. So yeah, the process is going forward. That's it.
Okay, great. So still moving ahead. That's good. Let's see, tracking issue or stale issues. Okay, so let's look at stale issues. Okay, we don't see anything new. Let's just take a quick look at some of these.
Left.
So I guess
this is one that we've left.
Right.
Waiting to hear back from the poster to get some any sort of clarification or whatnot.
Right. I wonder if this one we can take off the stale list.
I think that's fair.
And, you know, we'll just like, there hasn't been an answer in 28 days. If it goes stale again, we might say, okay, well, we're done.
I think that's
Makes
fair.
sense. Okay. Okay, 965. Just looking at the bottom here. Okay, I think that one, I think we should leave this one on. Well, I don't know. What do people think? Should we do the same thing with this one?
I think so.
Okay.
Otherwise, we will continue coming to it.
Right. Yeah, I think it's like it's there if there's, you know, we're discussing it. The reason to have it kind of on the stale list, I think we've addressed.
Right. I think this is the only one that probably should stay because it has been discussed pretty recently.
Right. Okay. So I think we figured out what we want to do this, and I think Jack, you'd reached out to me just confirming what needed to be due, and I see actually we have a PR. So let's take a look at that.
This was like a OneLine Change, I think. I believe.
Right. Yeah, that seems pretty straightforward. So, and then in our test, so you've got to test the test that it makes sure it works as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'm going to put that on my list to take a look on right after the meeting. So yeah, we can probably.
One thing that I just see right now on line 44.
Okay.
You put a space before that parenthesis and symbol description. Do you see that?
I'm gonna just do this and we can fix it. So you said a space before here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
But everything else looks pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, okay. So yeah, so if people want to take a quick look and add their +1s, I'll plan to do that right after the meeting too, and we can go ahead and get that landed.
All right.
I'd
So
say at this
then,
point, we can probably go ahead.
so we would end up landing this, and then this allows us on Node Addon API to handle correctly primitives being thrown. Correct.
Right. So let's go back to,
Because it was either
one.
if
No.
we can create a reference on any value, then we will do that. But if we can create it on a symbol,
Right.
then what we can do is copy the JS value into a native value for all the other primitives, and then just do references for symbols.
Right. We can.
Or what?
I have a question.
Mhm.
Is that since we are only, let's say, loosen the restrict in the code to symbols, so I believe the best solution in here is that we don't extend the Node API reference in Node Addon API to other primitive values, but rather than just extend to symbol values too. But in the error, like say NAPI error, we are create native reference to those primitives and loosen it to be allowed to reference to arbitrary JavaScript values, so that the semantics of NAPI reference will not be, like say, bit different with the Node Addon API reference.
Right. We check the code we change the code that's creating the exception or handling the exception objects to wrap the native values, right?
Yeah, right. But
yes,
not
as opposed to changing the reference.
Yeah, quite right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So, but you're right. So I guess we can leave this one on here so that, once the other one lands, we come back and do the Node API side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Jack, for taking that on. Okay, so we've looked at stale issues. No things reported here. npm node add-on API, just to take a quick look. I guess the usage is still sort of trending upwards, which is good, but we don't have any specific ones we know about. I guess in terms of dependence, we could remember that, but I don't remember what it's been before. So anyway, so I guess nothing to discuss on that one. Creating a matrix of tested methods. So Jack, do you have things you'd like to discuss on that front?
Nothing at the moment. I just working through like the thread state function. There's quite a bit of an API, so I have to like go through quite slowly, but should be done like next week, I think.
Okay. There was a PR that I took a look at and looked okay to me, but I just mentioned other people on the team that Jack had done to say, hey, does anybody else want to take a look? So just a heads up, I'll just point that one here too. It's adding the function reference testing.
Yep.
This one right here. So anyway, just a heads up if anybody else wants to take a look. Otherwise, I'll plan to land that relatively soon.
Okay.
Yeah, I did make some small changes, some small comments on that. There was an extraneous console log that I think we can remove. And then just in general, some formatting, like maybe just auto format the files, because I saw a lot of discrepancies. Just some small nitpicks.
Yeah,
but for the most part, everything looked good.
If he runs npm lint fix, that should fix that. Does that run on our test code?
Is the linter
we
on
are
for?
Yeah, we are only linking the C++ files.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't have like a strict standard on the JavaScript, but if you just open your IDE and do a format or something, that'd be that'd be fine in my mind, I think.
The linter's configuration in Node core is just way too much tight bonded to the core project. So
Right.
I believe it's hard to migrate it to be used in Node Addon API.
I guess we could use something just like ESLint.
Yeah. We could add
Standard minus the semicolon part or something would be my vote, or.
Yeah, that
But-
would be great.
But I guess that's something we could, and that's a separate issue is, yeah, okay. So if we don't have linting, then yeah, Kevin's suggestion is good. Or if you wanted to look at, that would be a good, should we open an issue for that?
I think that makes sense because we added
Okay.
the issue for the testing, unit testing.
Right, and suggestion is ESLint with standard. Is it with standard or is it something?
If you want semicolon, I think that is same standard.
I believe it's called recommended.
Or semi-standard, I think is the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Is that, I'm just typing what I'm thinking. Do other people think that makes sense or have other preferences?
I personally don't know all of the different things. I would just suggest whichever one gives us the least changes. But
Yeah, that would be, you'd have to go try out a few. I think standard
Yeah.
might be along those lines, just in the, like it uses, pretty sure that's the one that uses semicolons, which I believe we have, right?
I was
Yeah,
thinking
we
that
have-
can we enable ESLint on the files or the lines we are changing in a single PR, but not apply it to the whole project, like what we are doing now on the C++ linters.
Right, okay.
is it also a problem though, when we introduce the linter to also just lint everything as well?
But in this way, it would be a problem if you have a big pull request opened. I think.
And it will be hard to check the file history if
Okay.
we are like into checking programs.
I think that's fair. Okay.
Since this is the test code,
Yeah, that's also true.
and we don't do a lot of backporting, I wonder if like it should be just run, you know, run and deploy as part of the test of part of adding. Like I know, like in Node Core, we wouldn't do that simply because it's a pain to backport and everything, but we very rarely backport to any other thing. So it might be just like, let's just run it. There's a big change. We'll assume that because it's run by the linter, if it's all okay, and then just leave it. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense to me. It is all, yeah, it is just test code, but yeah, they do bring up points though. Like if there's a lot of changes, you
I'm
know,
just afraid of that lots of changes we can hardly review on it.
Right, but in this case, I'm saying like, let's just, as part of the thing that adds the linting, run the linter and commit as part of that. And my assumption is we don't need to review that. Right, like
Yeah,
it's a mechanical linter has done the change. The challenge I see is where we defer it to when you actually have another PR and then you have a whole bunch of changes mixed in and you don't know which are changes and which are. So if we just sort of run it all as part of it, it might get around that.
The point is that the Git C-long format we are using now, it's just formatting the lines you are changed. So it's fairly low overhead when you're reviewing the new changes, since it's only formatting the line you are changed.
Yeah.
So not the whole file you are changing. So it will not format the other non-relevant lines to your change.
Right. But
I guess-
but go ahead.
But what Michael, I think, is saying is like, since the linter is a mechanical change, we don't necessarily even have to review it. If it is, if the change that we make is just all linting changes, and then everything would be good. And if like the next PR, we wouldn't,
Yep.
it would already be based off of correct linting code.
Yeah, and it's a little, one, it's mechanical. We don't think there'll be any problems. We don't need to review it. Two, it's test code, so risk is a little bit lower as well. And we don't do backports regularly, so the impact of the code being changed from previous version, especially in the test stuff, it just seems like doing that all as one thing would be a lot less work than trying to sort of incrementally do it. Which totally makes sense in other cases, but I'm just wondering for this case, we just sort of rip the Band-Aid off and.
I found those two are both fine, since we are just formatting our test cases, but I will prefer the incremental one, since we are more, the work to review the change will be much more lightened. We don't have to commit a bunch of changed files and don't know if there is anything mixed into it. So.
Right, but are you worried that the linter will make mistakes?
It's hardly the linter make mistakes, but we are changing a lot of files. Who can tell that there is nothing else we are accidentally adding to it or any other things? I'm not saying that it's intended, but it may be, since we are hardly review the changes, so it will be hard for us to identify any problem things. But anyway, since it's
for example, if
test
somebody is like they have local changes on their branch, and then they run the linter, and then they commit all of those changes as part of the linting process, but it actually includes their local changes. That would be something that would be hard to find, because we would be assuming that everything is fine. Is that one of your concerns then?
Yeah, very much similar.
Or an example of a concern, right?
We're hard to review such changes.
Well, I think, what if we try running a linter, seeing where all the errors are, and then we can go from there.
The other thing we could do, like if that's the main concern, we could actually have two people do it separately. Right? Like whoever's got the PR could run the linter. Boom, here it is. That should come up with a very fixed diff, right? Except for some files. And then if somebody else does the same, okay, I'm just going to run the checkout, run the linter. They should get the exact same diff, right?
That is,
and
also,
I'd be pretty sure if two people did it like that,
yeah,
it's really unlikely that those two people will get unintended changes that match, right?
yeah. I mean, that's also makes sense. Like if somebody's doing the person who's introducing the linter changes can put in their PR the steps that they did in order to run the linter. And then somebody that's reviewing the PR just needs to perform, I guess, those same steps, and then see if they can get the same output. You know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's fair. And you can do like a checksum on a tarball of the repository or something, but yeah, just including steps on how to reproduce everything, then I think that should be fine.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay.
That's good. I'll just put, I think this is also like a good thing that anybody can pick up. So let's put a sort of good first issue kind of thing.
Mhm.
Then we'll have one of us do the validation. Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so Jack, that was on the test front. There wasn't anything else you wanted to chat about?
No, that's it for now. Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. Let us now look at, I guess, some of the issues in the repos. Are there any ones that people want to call out to start with?
I want only remember that I have paragraphs on a node API headers, and I made the changes that you requested. So please take a look when you have time.
Right, this one. Okay, so let me just take a quick
Yeah,
look.
I think that you already approved, but I think that I needed approval from Gabriel and Kevin.
Right, if you've addressed the comments, Kevin, do you want to take another look and then? Because I guess
I am looking right now. Yeah. Okay.
And then there is an issue on Addon API. I think the last issue, the last, yeah, libuv and worker threads.
right.
Yeah, and so I think that he is asking us if it's a good idea use worker threads instead of, for example, yeah, a libuv or essentially async worker, no? If you use Node API or Node API. If you see at the linked issue, the problem is that libuv handle a pool of 4 threads by default.
Yep.
And it's so if you have a pool of, for example, 5 connection to yeah, you need to wait that one of these connection is will be released, no?
Right.
Okay, so this is a problem, and so this is the main problem essentially. But I think that it's the same if you use the worker thread. Because you have a limited number of CPU available on the system. And so you need to implement a pool of worker threads to better handle all the things. And then, do the same thing that libuv do under the hood for you, no? But with the worker thread. So you need to implement this logic But yeah, you can do the same thing using the worker thread for me.
The one thought I did have was that if they're using libuv directly, that's not guaranteed ABI safe.
Yeah, it's a limitation, but yeah.
So the worker threads
but,
might let you get around that. Although then, like worker threads aren't, they have their own heap and those things. So you can't necessarily easily communicate between them on the JavaScript side anyway.
Yeah, there are some limitation because you need to pass using the messages, no, between
Right. Yeah.
between the threads. It's yeah, it's a limitation, and this could discourage this approach.
So you're probably going to
this
end up with some more overhead. I'm guessing.
If you use worker thread or
yeah, if you use worker threads, like you'd have to do a transfer from the worker thread's JavaScript environment, like through message passing or whatever, like you said, back to the main thread, right?
Yeah.
Right. But just for my clear questioning, the libuv worker pool of 4, that default pool, that does that interact with the number of worker threads you can have?
No.
Right. So then if they were to move over to worker threads, then the limitation of having 4 would be removed.
You would have I think Nicola's point is you still have to have a pool, and you'd have to choose the number of threads in the pool, unless you dynamically create the threads, which would create some extra overhead as well.
Right.
Yeah, because at one point, if you have for example, for 8 CPUs, yeah, you can. It's not a good idea in terms of performance. No, continue to create a new worker thread. No, so if you have, for example, 20 worker threads, it's not ideal for me. So you need to have a right number of worker threads and then have a policy for doing this. No, a good example of a library that do this for me is Piscina, for example.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, you need to implement something like that, and then use it. It's yeah, you are adding some overhead in this case, but you can remove the limitation of have only 4 thread. So this is the only thing that yeah, I thought.
Okay, so they would be able to remove the limitation, but then it basically puts the the job of architecting the correct thread context handling and whatnot to the programmer, because now they'd be making worker threads instead of leaving everything to libuv, right?
Yeah, it depends what you need to do essentially when you need to make these kind of choices, no? So It helps a lot if you need to handle a very intensive CPU task. And I recently did some projects that use worker thread in this way. With a native add-on, and yeah, it works well.
I'm just writing up some sort of trying to capture our discussion a little bit here. The potential disadvantages, you know, will likely still.
Yeah.
Threads. Right.
Yeah. Control. Control. Yes. Yes.
Does anybody have any experience? I guess we haven't done any migration from, say, libuv threads to worker threads.
I'm thinking, but could you do the same thing with thread safe function? Because using thread safe function, you can have your thread model. So inside the native code, you can do yeah, you can create any number of threads that you want. I'm not yeah.
I
So
think
I'm
it's
asking.
still, I think it still ends up running on the, like, I'm not sure what would happen if you would, in that call.js function, which runs on the main loop, like if you end up having a very heavy computation there, I think you would end up having problems. Like, I don't know if the thread safe function actually allows you to do multiple things at the same time, because I think the thread safe function just allows you to queue a call into node, and then it'll run that your C function on the main thread at a specific time. I don't know if you could be able to spawn multiple of those. I think the main thing is like their use case. If they're doing a lot of heavy work on that thread,
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
But I think the thread safe function, like on the main thread, the issue in this case, I don't think is the work on the main thread necessarily, right? Like the issue is they're creating a libuv thread, they're making a native call, and they must be, are they, like they're using libuv to create the threads. Now, I'm not sure, thread safe function may be silent on how you create your thread itself.
right. Like if they're just doing something where they're creating a bunch of threads and doing something very simple and small, then yeah, they could go. I think it would make sense to go to thread safe functions. I think we may need to take a little more look into what their code does.
Right.
Because like if they just have some code that every time you call a function creates a thread. And if they have that in some loop, then of course it's going to only allow 4 simultaneous ones if you're using libuv. And if what that thread is doing internally is really small, then yes, it could easily be a thread safe function. But
So
then they would end up having to figure out how to handle the native threading themselves.
right, because I think that's what I like. Like you said, we'd have to look at the code, but my sense is the issue is not that they need to do JavaScript code that's heavy. They want to do the native code
I
would be
see,
proxied
yeah,
anyway,
okay.
right? Like, so you're spinning up a whole JavaScript environment to run some native code in this case.
Right.
So maybe that's another disadvantage, you know. Oops.
Yeah, because you made extra cost to from JavaScript to native code. I think, is it right?
Hey, right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Okay. I think that's maybe the key thing is like, yeah, okay, you could. So, however, I think it's more like, however, you can likely get the same benefit. Right. So yeah, okay. That's probably maybe one of the key things because you're getting a whole JavaScript heap. Maybe you said JavaScript execution environment. Maybe we just better just say. Does that sound good? Nicola, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's good.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, thinking about it, that may be the key thing. Like if you move to worker threads, you do have that extra overhead of a whole JavaScript environment. And if you're not using that, that might be the biggest deciding factor.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Any other ones that we should bring? Anybody wants to bring up before we take a quick look?
No, for now.
No.
I
Okay.
think
Here,
that we need
go ahead.
to go on the main on node repo if
Yep.
there is some issues.
Sure. Yeah, I'll look there. So here, I think I looked. These two are, I think we're just waiting for Deepak to do a few small updates, and we'll get them landed. I think otherwise things look like they are pretty much on top. So, okay, so I'll switch to node repo. Node. I always have trouble finding this, but eventually we will get there. There we go. Okay, was there one you wanted to start with, Nicola, or just from the top of the list?
No, I have not issues in particular.
Okay. So this one, there's been a bit of back and forth. These ones, it's always GC. This one is interesting in that he seems to say just by wrapping a buffer in another object, the issue goes away. So I think it's interesting. I still have this sort of feeling that there's, it's something related to GC behavior as opposed to a problem in Node API, but you never know. Buffers, we do have some different codes, so it's not impossible, but so that's that one. Happy promise then.
Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth feedback. That's like, is this even needed to be added?
Right.
And I don't know if there hasn't been any progress since those comments. So.
Right, okay. So there's been I guess, is it just waiting on? And I don't see, I guess there's nothing we think we need to do really push this ahead or not, right? Unless we want to comment and say we don't think it's useful, we don't think it makes sense, or
I don't think it makes sense. Like I wouldn't want to add it. And that's that opinion. Others share that opinion.
Okay. Do you want to chime in the issue that we don't think it makes sense?
I thought I did. This was
reviewers. This Kevin.
It's a duplicate, that's why. If you scroll down to the bottom,
or it's duplicated, or you commented on the issues.
That one there, 3.
Oh, this one here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was his first one, and then he closed it. But this is where even Gabe said it above too.
Right. So should we? So basically, based on that.
Oh. So it was close. Yeah.
So is this, I think the suggestion maybe have been to say, okay, we'll use then instead. And then he was like, okay, so we'll say then instead. Right. So I'm kind of agree if you can already do it.
Okay, I found the other issue that he opened.
Mhm.
It's 39376.
Okay.
That, yeah, and this is the one where I commented. So it's like the same PR that he made and closed it and then reopened it.
Okay.
Just
Right.
with
Okay.
that. Yeah, and like, yeah, Legendicus also pointed out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe the answer is like this seemed to be already been discussed.
Mm. Yeah, in his previous PR as well as someone else's. Yes.
So do we want to say like we discussed in the Node API meeting and we agree we don't think this should be added?
I think that's fair.
Anybody object to that?
No.
And I guess, do we feel okay about closing it?
I think I think so. If he has any really strong objections, he can always reopen. He created a second PR already, so he
Right.
would just create a third one if you wanted. But
Or maybe to avoid these, we can wait 1 week and we will close next week.
Sure. Okay.
So yeah,
yeah,
just for waiting some objection to our decision.
Right. I'm
think that's
gonna
fair.
mark. I will. Okay, so I'll do that. So that basically like it shows up as like, we don't think we want this to land and we can leave it eventually either be closed or maybe be closed by the stale bot. Or there'll be more discussion that, you know, brings out new
Yeah.
discussion, thoughts, whatever. Okay. Let me see. Are there others? Just looking to see if I have. Let me go back to just the node API. There we go. Okay, well, I think there's some discussion on that one, but no answer from the. This one has an example. Oh yeah, I guess I've said, I do have that on my list to take a look, but I haven't. So let's look at that. Otherwise it doesn't seem like there's any sort of new ones. Go ahead.
Calling Navi underscore function from min.gw. I think that I answered.
Right, this
3.8,
one. Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if we need to try. We can close this.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you for helping him with that, or her. Any other ones that people want to discuss?
No.
This one, I'm gonna see if there's anything. Okay, this. Okay, anything else we should talk about before we close out for today then?
If Gabriel approved my PR on Node API headers, I think that I can authorize it to publish on NPM. Is it right?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think, you know, if let me just take a quick look.
Yeah.
Node add-on, sorry, Node API
Node API
headers.
headers.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, it's been long enough that, you know, you've addressed, I can see you've addressed the comments. I'm happy to like, just go ahead and land it. You can move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. For me,
Okay.
it's good.
Okay. So there you go, landed. And
in this weekend, I can publish the module.
sounds great.
Okay.
The only thing we should probably do is when you publish, like add the Node Foundation as another, like as a contributor. So let me just, yeah, npm.js node add-on API.
No.
Right, if we go here, you can see like we have this user, Node.js Foundation as, go ahead.
You no
Could you
longer-
share the screen?
Oh yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, good point.
So,
Yeah, I'm looking at it myself, but that doesn't help. Right, so like if we look at the collaborators, we always want to have the Node.js Foundation. Now the name's not right, we may want to change that, but anyway, like we have this account which the build working group has access to. So if you can add that account as a collaborator as well, that would be good for the new package. Does that make
okay,
sense?
so
Do you know how to do that?
Yeah, let's see, add collaborator. Okay, I think these are the instructions. If I, well, actually here, I'll pull that.
yeah, if you send me.
So I think if you just do an npm owner add Node.js Foundation.
Okay.
And the name of the package.
Okay.
Because yeah, that's just a backup for like modules that are managed by the you know, the node project, so that say we all disappeared, you know, somebody would be able to go and log in from the build working group and add some new collaborators.
Yeah, it's right. Okay.
Okay, any other things? Okay, if not, well, thanks for everybody's time this week. Great meeting as always, and we will see everybody in GitHub in next week.
Okay, bye.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.